Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back. Today is Saturday, March 1st, and this is like the third time I'm recording this video because I forgot to turn on my microphone. Isn't webcasting fun? No. Alright, well anyways, getting back to it. So, this week we established a portfolio. We started to set up some initial investments. We kind of talked through some initial strategy discussions. And then coming into this weekend, typically on a Saturday morning, I run my system and I update all my reports. So one of the things that I wanted to do today was actually walk you through that process and how I do that. So before I get into that, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about why I wanted to show this. I began to move forward with what I'm doing here with all this YouTube stuff and this training program and trying to coach people on investments. I think it's important to kind of broadcast and put out there what it is I'm kind of also doing behind the scenes and how I build things. And I think, pulling these reports together is very important for trying to do what it is that I do. And, I'm trying to coach you through different methods about how to manage your portfolio, and I'm trying to say that different things work. Well, how can I validate that if I don't have a testing system that can actually show you, yes, in fact, this is working, and here's what worked last week or last year. So having this reporting has been very important to me. Not only coming out and trying to coach the different methods, but then trying to reiterate what is actually working and what strategies you should be leveraging based on real test data. Now, getting into the reporting process, a lot of it is just very simple. It's some Google-based documents, Google Sheet-based documents where I leverage the data that I put in there and I create some charts and graphs off of that. And then I grab those charts and graphs and I put them in a Google drawing, and then I can add graphics and images and different things like that to kind of dress it up a little bit. Now, what it is once you establish all of that, then you have these linked objects that you can just refresh, and then you can create PDF or images from there. So initially with the website, I had a lot of the different images that were embedded, and then over time as I've developed more, I've been able to replace those images that I developed through this process with the actual code that is running, so everything is live. Now, I think it's important to go through this process because whether you're building a business or a presentation at work, it's all about progress and making progress. And you really do, if you're developing something like this, that phrase, fake it till you make it, really kind of comes to mind where, initially when I started doing this and explaining it, there are a few people kind of asking me questions. And in order to communicate some of these methods or some of the outcomes, I started creating reports in order to communicate that. And then as I started generating the reports and I'm reviewing them on a weekly basis, the process of generating them and reviewing them is helping me kind of hone in and find little issues or bugs or different things that come up. When you're analyzing 7,300 assets on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, or really anytime you're analyzing something where there's that number of units, there are going to be different moments in time where there's certain characteristics or certain elements or maybe errors in the original data that cause problems. So by generating these reports on a weekly basis, it's really helped me hone in on what is the product, how do I present all of these different charts and graphs. And when I started out with my site, a lot of it was just very data-based. I had an Excel-based workbook that you could look through, and it would generate automatically off of some of these processes that I had established in SQL. And it was nice for somebody like me in finance that, is used to using spreadsheets. It's easy to sort through and I could get to the information that I was looking for. But for the vast majority of the people, spreadsheets are really not something that is intuitive or even generally something that people want to use. So I knew that in order to have this product be more readily available to more people, I had to come up with some type of interactive, some type of user dashboard or website or application that people could come to in order to interact with the data. So that's, kind of was the original concept behind creating the website and starting to establish all of the data in the website. That was inspired by having these Excel reports and not having necessarily a communication method that was going to be the best. So it was all about figuring out a better way that people could interact with the data. And then from there, as I started to get more interaction with the data, it was all about, well, how do I tell the story of what's going on in the data? And that's where this reporting package came in. And going back to my comment about fake it till you make it, I started that reporting package in September of 2024, and now it's March of 2025. So for nearly 6 months on a weekly basis, I'm clerking this report. I'm running through it all. I'm reviewing it. I'm trying to find any issues or anything that's jumping out at me, trying to figure out better ways to develop it. And that process over time has really helped me to hone it in and figuring out what it really should be, how it should be presented, and some of the best ways to communicate it. And by having done that, now what I have is I have a resource that, like I mentioned a few moments ago, I'm starting to embed these graphics into the website so that way you can see the actual reports right there in the site. And then as I've embedded them into the site, then I go back and I actually go through and I code all of that. So it's about, steps, it's about progression, it's about building on, those things that have come before. And, if you really want to get to the point where, you're building a company, or even if it's just some improvement at work, your managers, other people are going to want to see presentations and all this other stuff to walk them through it. And I know for me, the general reaction a lot of times was, oh my God, that's going to be more work than the actual task at hand. But that's really not the case. In doing that presentation or that work on the side, it's almost kind of practice for the real event, and you're going through the motions of developing it and talking through it, and what are the potential issues that could come up, or what sort of things do you need to consider that you personally might want to see it a certain way, but as you're talking to and developing it with others, that spectrum kind of broadens, and you've got to consider other options. So by having those types of those things, whether it's a presentation deck or a PDF based report, it allows you to kind of go through that struggle and work through it all before you get to that final product. So that's part of why I wanted to kind of walk you through this report today, because you can kind of see, not all of the elements are perfect. I'm sure some of those IT folks that are out there would kind of laugh probably at some of the things that I've done, but I think it's interesting that it's allowed me to get to this point. It's allowed me to continue to develop all of these things and continue to build on all those things that came before this point. And I think that's an important lesson to share. And I'm very excited and glad to have you here. So stay tuned, take a look at, the report construction, and then we'll talk a little bit more at the end. Okay, so like I was talking about, the entirety of the report that I generate as PDFs and turn into the final report, it's all based in Google, and they're these Google drawings. Now, I'm not advocating for one program over another. Google was free for me, so that was just one of the reasons why I leveraged it. And these Google drawings is something that I noticed popped up a couple months ago. Maybe they've been out there longer, but as somebody that used Photoshop for a number of years, but I don't have a license for it, so I don't use it anymore. Google Drawings actually has a lot of power to it. It's not Photoshop, but you can do a lot of things with it, including what I'm about to show you here. So I just kind of wanted to highlight to you that, all of these items are set up as essentially an image. And then those images, you can download it as an image or you can download it as a PDF. So what I do is I download them all as PDFs, and then I stitch those PDFs together into the final report. But before I jump into the reporting, it really kind of started with this little chart right here. I was trying to figure out a way to communicate the different strategies, the different quantity of assets, and then the different return histories, and trying to figure out a way to kind of communicate that better to other people. So I started out with just a little basic report like this, and then from here it really broadened to where now this one here is 1 week's worth of performance. I have a year to date and then 1 year, and then it really broadens out into the different strategies, where it also includes the optimization frequencies in there as well. And then from there, it gets into like top 10 best performing strategies, top sectors, top industries. Those were some reports that we saw yesterday, on our website that are now fully integrated, as well as the top performing portfolios, biggest movers. Those are all fully integrated into the sites now. It has our top watch list for dividend, growth stocks, and then growth stocks that are under $10. And actually, if you go to the search feature in the website, these are all integrated lists that are in there that you can sort and filter by. And then we just kind of recap top volume, as well as there's 2 different comparisons that are in here. So it's 2 of the top volume stocks from last week, and then 2 of the top volume ETFs. And we just do a quick comparison to see how they compare as assets. And then there's these full pages here that go through an entire strategy. So it'll take a look at, like I believe the one that's opening is for weekly optimization, and then it looks at all the different strategies, return time periods, and quantities of assets to include, and it just gives you one quick snapshot where you can see across the board, how it's been performing from a historical standpoint. So, that's a lot, and as I was kind of developing all these things, I didn't really know exactly what to look for or how to present it. So I really just kind of kept building and building and building until I arrived at something that I felt presented all of the potential outcomes and outputs. And then from there, it was really trying to figure out how do I develop and integrate this system into the website so that way you can search through and pull up all of these things without going through the reports. And that's something that I'm still working through. I hope to have that done here shortly. That's more of an enhancement, but of course you can see all of these things on the site and take a closer look at them. So, and then one other item that I include at the end are some of the helper sheets. So for those of you that are subscribed to the website, you might be more familiar with this stuff. This is content that you'll see on the site about our testing process. We have a standard operating procedure for building a portfolio. Strategize, search, optimize, and reassess is the standard operating procedure that we coach. It's also, you've seen it a few times on the website and in the videos, but it just kind of walks you through exactly what I mean for each one of those steps. And maybe that's something that we'll touch on next week. And again, it walks you through the test funds and then some investment terms and definitions. And then it actually walks you through the math for all these items as well. And then some frequently asked questions. And those you can actually find on the website. But this is the entirety of the PDF report. There's also an Excel-based report that I did for a while. And this Excel, like I mentioned earlier, the Excel-based report was the original version of the report that really kind of helped me hone in and work through the process and developing the data, getting the right outputs, and creating the automation in the databases, which is probably the most important thing anymore, is developing that automation and making sure that as much of this as possible is fully automated. I've gotten it all to the point now where it requires probably about 5 minutes worth of interaction a day beyond making some of these videos, and everything else on the site runs by itself. And even then, that I can also automate, but I want to still kind of exert a certain amount of control over the daily updates. So for right now, that's still the amount of time that I'm putting into it. And then here is an example of one of the Excel-based reports where you can just see all the same information you can see in the site. And then you can just sort it by the various filters for time periods, different exchanges. The Excel reports actually also include items that are on the Amex exchange. It's now the NASDAQ GS exchange. And then the over-the-counter markets as well. So there's about 14,000 assets that are in these spreadsheets that I create, but that's a lot of data. And for the website, I tried to stick to just kind of assets that are a little bit more popular, going to see a little bit more volume, hopefully companies that are more reputable, by sticking with just ones that are on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, which there's still 7,000 assets that are out there. So it's not like it's limiting you a whole lot. But the other exchanges are out there, and that's something that, depending on how this takes off, maybe I'll look at adding some of those as well, or adding some additional packages where if you wanted to see Canadian stocks, Canadian exchanges, or British or Australian or Singapore or Hong Kong, that data is available. It's just a matter of if the demand is there for it or not. So you'll have to let me know if that's something that you're interested in. And we'll take a look at that. But these are the reports that get generated out of the system. That's what's kind of led me to being able to produce and show all the data that's in the site. And again, I just wanted to emphasize a lot of this because it's important to, practice all of these things and continue to build on them, because the reality of trying to build a company or build a channel or whatever is it's kind of that old iceberg example where you see that little bit of ice sticking up out of the water, but everything underneath that water is so much more. And that's really, everything under the water is really failure when you're building a company. So you got to get used to failure. You got to get used to failing because it's all part of it. And that's everything that's underneath that water. And if you just kind of continue to ignore it, continue to push forward and continue to work on the things that you know are right to produce or right to put out there, then eventually you'll get there. And that's part of this story, and that's part of what I wanted to kind of communicate today. So stay tuned here. I'm going to kind of walk you through updating this report. I'll throw some music on it, speed up the video or whatever. And then at the end here, I've got some final thoughts about this initial week. So stay tuned for that. Thanks. All right, well, that effectively does it for the first week. A little bit of a loss here, about 2% on the week, so not a great start, but you know, you're not always going to make money when you go and you make those investments. So hopefully this ends up being kind of a good story and something that a lot of people can relate to. Also, this is something that, you know, I get it that it's only $1,000, so for a lot of people it probably doesn't seem like a lot. But I'll try to see if I can find some graphic or study. You know, there's about 50-60% of people in the United States that live paycheck to paycheck, and they just simply don't have a lot of extra money to invest with. Now, there's a lot of people out there that'll tell you, well, you should have 3 months or 6 months expenses, you know, saved before you ever begin with investing. And there is some, there's a good kind of reason behind that, and it's because you want to be able to really experience the compounding of the interest on your returns over time by not having to actually pull your money out of the market. But the reality is for most people today, with the current economic situations that we're in, a lot of people can't even spare $1,000 to invest. And that's part of the intention behind my site, why it's all virtual. Number one, I don't want to manage your money because it comes with a lot of legal stuff that I have to deal with that I'm trying to avoid, and I can do that by just simply offering this as a training program, because ultimately my goal is to help people out and to try to provide a platform where you can learn how to invest. And you know, the people that I want to be able to come and learn how to invest, it doesn't matter if you have, you know, if you are living paycheck to paycheck or if you have a couple $1 million in the bank account. These are methods that anybody and everybody can learn. They're not, you know, discriminatory against people from a certain social class or certain types of backgrounds. This is for everybody to learn how to invest. And again, the vast majority of people right now are living paycheck to paycheck. I want to give them an opportunity to come in and learn the things that they need to learn, so that way when they do have that opportunity to take on more money to actually build and grow their investments, your investments, you have that ability to do that because you've been able to practice that in the system. You've been able to build good habits. And you know, all of this is trying to lead you towards that direction of being able to be more independent with your investments. Of course, I always encourage people to engage with financial professionals and go and seek that advice, because as you do that, you're going to be able to build, or you're going to be building a community around you that helps to, you know, give you feedback when you need it, help you avoid pitfalls, but also tell you about certain market insights that might be kind of out of your purview. You're not paying attention to certain things, but by having these established relationships with financial professionals, they can give you a heads up of what to look out for. The other thing that I want to talk about that I thought was kind of interesting, and we brought it up earlier in the week, is that in relation to the top performing sectors, and I'll put the graphic up here on the screen, 3 of the worst performing sectors were finance, ETFs, and real estate. So if you don't think that you can manage a portfolio, just know that the people that are out there that have studied this stuff for years, that have worked in this industry, that work tirelessly and hard to build good funds, they still suck at it. They do. So if you think that you can't come in here and learn a few basic things and be able to actually kind of beat some of them, I mean, I get it. You know, it seems like the barrier to entry is pretty big, you know, and when you're trying to compare yourself to somebody that's managing like a hedge fund or something like that. And to a certain respect, from an intelligence level, like, yeah, those people know way more than me. They know way more about the market, about the industries and companies and sectors that they're investing in. But at the end of the day, you and I have just as much of a chance to beat them at their own game as they do at actually winning it. And if you look at the actual sectors of the economy where these professionals speculate and interact, they're some of the worst ones out there. You know, you have a better outcome if you went and you invested in like a waste management service than if you invested in an ETF a lot of the times. So that's just something to think about. Trash could be worth more than an ETF, like literal trash. But you know, what's going to work for anybody, what's going to work for everybody is different. And you got to figure out what's going to work best for you. And that's part of why I developed these tools, so you can search through the assets that are out there, so you can build portfolios that you're comfortable with, that you feel comfortable moving forward with. And then I built those platforms so that way you can save these things and track them over time and see how they perform. All of that, of course, is to try to help you figure out how to get to those next steps with your own investments and try to figure out how to better manage your own money. Now, I'm not a financial guru. I'm not going to be able to sit here and tell you how to save that $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is you need in order to get investing. There's a lot of wonderful people that are out there that offer that type of coaching and programs and And even in social media, there's a lot of people out there that do things like what I'm doing now, where they track their portfolios publicly. But what I found is the vast majority of those people, they're good people. You can follow them. They've got a lot of good advice. Most of them, I quite like reading their stories and seeing how things kind of progress for them. But the vast majority of them are not, they're sort of the exception. They're not the rule. Those are the folks that they had the wherewithal, they had the ability, and they had the opportunity to save that money and to begin to grow it over time. And they had certain people in their lives that helped to coach them to understand when to identify those opportunities and when to move forward with building their investment portfolio. And some of them had just started out of a habit. Some of them, they wanted to be more financially independent. Others, I think, they just kind of do it because they like the attention, which is fine. Me, I'm not really a social media guy. I know I'm kind of doing all of this stuff and putting myself out there, but this is really kind of uncomfortable for me to do all of these things. But, we've all got to push ourselves to grow and get to those next steps and stages in our lives. And I think part of recording all of this, not only from an investment standpoint and trying to coach you how to learn and better understand investments, but also, some of those aspects about building a business and integrating that in here, however I can kind of help other people out by getting my story out there. I think that's going to be beneficial. And, ultimately where this goes, we'll find out. But I'm pretty excited to be doing this. I'm excited to have you along for the journey, and stay tuned. We'll see what happens next week. Take care.